What's up, everybody? Welcome into MLB DFS Live for Friday, July 23rd. I'm your host, Ben Hostler, joined by Justin Bales. Bales, we have a big slate tonight, 14 games. Doesn't look like there's any big weather concerns, which is good because for a while there, it was every day we were getting two, three postponements, and it was always games that we wanted to target. So it's good that we finally get a big slate here without any of the weather concerns. What's your thoughts on the slate as a whole today?
Yeah, I really like it because there's, 10,000 different ways that you can go, which kind of cuts down the chalk a little bit. We'll get into it with pitchers and stacks and everything, but there's a ton of spots to attack because there's really bad pitchers on the mound. Like, I don't know, Jay Happ. I know that we absolutely love attacking him. Chris Bubich is throwing tonight, I believe. So a lot of spots that you can really attack with the bats, but then you have like Joe Musgrove mispriced, even like Yusei Kikuchi. Then you have the top end starters, Zach Wheeler, Freddie Peralta, Garrett Cole. So there's a ton of different ways you can go, which kind of limits how high the chalk is going to be, which I always think is great in baseball.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think this is a good slate overall. So we'll go ahead and dive right in. If you guys are interested, you can head to dfskarma.com for all of our free content. Bales has a breakdown up for today's slate. I have game theory up, and then I'll have final thoughts posted before lock for subscribers. We're going to start off at pitcher here. There's a lot of pitching options on this slate, and I don't think there's a clear standout play person that you have to play. So I think what's going to happen is ownership's going to be pretty spread out, at least on DraftKings. We have Garrett Cole at 10K, Freddie Peralta, Zach Wheeler, Giolito, even Tyler Mahle, I think you could throw in there. And then there's some cheaper guys as well. Joe Musgrove's 8,400. I think he's going to be pretty high owned. And I personally am probably not going to play him today. So we'll kind of get into that. But if we're going to talk about the top guys first, I think the number one option is Zach Wheeler. I think the way this Braves lineup looks in its current form, it's definitely attackable. I know their lineup just came out, so I'll have to check it, but their projected lineup had a combined WOBA of just 311 for the season, which is pretty low. And Zach Wheeler's just been really good, one of the best pitchers in the NL this season. So I think Wheeler's my number one, but you can certainly make a case for any of those other top guys.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's just that you're not scared of the Atlanta lineup. Like Freddie Peralta gets the White Sox. Do I think that Peralta can throw well against them? Absolutely. But the White Sox have a lot of upside in the lineup. Garrett Cole gets Boston. Do I think Cole can throw well? Absolutely. Boston, again, a lot of upside, especially at home throughout their lineup. So when you look at kind of the top pitchers, it's just that Zach Wheeler, I do personally believe, gets the best matchup. But also, I think that Zach Wheeler is actually the best pitcher on the slate. And I've kind of I've been on the Wheeler train for a couple of years now and been saying that he's a Cy Young candidate. And it looks like any season besides what Jacob DeGrom's doing, and Wheeler could be a front runner for Cy Young. I don't really think that you need to worry too much about who Atlanta's putting out just because their lineup at this moment isn't very good. The only concern, I guess, that I have is that obviously Philadelphia is a very hitter-friendly stadium, but Wheeler's used to it. He throws half his games every year there anyway, so I'm not really too concerned with that. But I guess if you would have one concern, that would probably be it.
Yeah, I think I agree for the most part. He's been pretty good at home since joining the Phillies, so I'm not worried about that as much as I usually would be. So I guess how I'll word this next question is outside of Wheeler, who would you play out of these guys? Because I think Cole, Freddie Peralta, and even Giolito, I think those guys will all be pretty similarly owned. I don't know if one of those guys is going to stand out above the other one because they all have pretty tough matchups. Giolito, I would say, probably has the best matchup against the Brewers, but he also probably is third in talent level at this current moment
Mhm.
between those three. So it's kind of like a win and a loss there in that matchup. So I think if I had to pick one other one, I think it's between Cole and Peralta for me. Um, but I haven't fully decided yet. Do you lean one way or another for a spend up outside of Wheeler?
So outside of Wheeler, I think for me, it would probably be Freddie Peralta. But then I also have Giolito slightly ahead of Garrett Cole. And nothing to do with Cole. I think that he's the better pitcher at this moment. I 100% agree with that. It's just I have a very difficult time attacking Boston, especially at home. And it's not like Garrett Cole's necessarily been untouchable since they kind of got rid of all the sticky stuff. So I do prefer Freddie Peralta. I just think that I would lean Giolito over Cole. But, if you told me you were going to play Cole over him, it's not like I would try to talk you off of it or anything.
Yeah, it's tough to figure out what to do with Cole. I mean, if you just look at his game log, 20 DK points, then he would drop down to 7 DraftKings points, then he dropped down to 6, then he went back up to 50, just absolutely dominated the Astros in that one start, and then had a 35 against Boston in his last start. So it's
Yep.
it's really tough to know what's going on. But yeah, I mean, matchup with Boston is super tough. I don't know, man. I actually think I would probably lean Cole, but I think it's between him and Peralta. I have no problems. I could see a Giolito getting a little bit of ownership just because of that matchup with the Brewers. He's a little bit cheaper. Um, but I think it's pretty clear I want to play Wheeler, and then I'm actually going to be dropping down for my second pitcher, so we'll talk about that in a minute. Next, let's talk about Joe Musgrove because he is currently, as of 4:30 today, projected to be the highest owned pitcher on today's slate. I just don't want to play him. I pulled up his numbers for the last month for Game 30 today. Sierra's over 4.5 runs, like 4.84. Strikeouts are below 20%. Swing and misses are down. It's certainly a good matchup against the Marlins, right? Like, I'm not denying that. But
Mhm.
why would you want to play a pitcher? Like, if you just isolated the numbers and it didn't have the name Joe Musgrove, you would never be interested in playing that pitcher on the slate. So I don't see why you want to use him when we have a bunch of good options.
Yeah, I agree with you. To the point where I probably won't be playing Joe Musgrove as chalk, especially obviously in tournaments. But I also don't have too many issues if you do want to play him, just because when you look at his numbers overall, not just like the last 30, they're still very solid. His xFIP's under 3.5, his strikeout rate's slightly under 30%. I mean, I don't generally love playing Joe Musgrove myself because he gets a lot of his fantasy points in like singular games, basically. Whereas I believe he threw that no hitter earlier in the year, right? And he scored like 50 fantasy points. And he just like barely tops 20 after that, but everyone kind of remembers what he did. I think he's a good pitcher. I think his struggles recently, they're kind of backed by his advanced metrics that he hasn't been throwing well. I also think that it's just a really good matchup. Obviously, you get the pitcher-friendly stadium in Miami. If this was like chalk Musgrove against anyone else, I would say avoid it. I think just because of the matchup, you can play him. But I do agree with you that I would probably rather go elsewhere just because even if Musgrove throws extremely well, it seems like he's not really going to score more than like max 25 or so fantasy points, which you can really get out of a lot of different pitchers on the slate.
Yeah, the only issue I have with playing him as chalk is David Price is way cheaper. So David Price is down here, priced at 6,300 on DraftKings. I don't think he's going to go super deep, but he got up to 66 pitches in his last start, so I think you're going to get close to 80 pitches here. For 6,300 against the Rockies, once again, they've been the worst road team in baseball. Their WRC plus as a team on the road is 60. That's over 20, I think 18 or 20 points less than the second worst team. And their team ISO on the road is 101. I mean, just horrible numbers on the road. David Price has actually looked pretty good since they've moved him back into the rotation, and that's really cheap. I think he can easily beat that salary, and if he goes even 5 innings against the Rockies, I think he can pretty easily beat that salary. So I actually like him for cheap today.
Yeah, I think Price is a really good play for his price tag. What do you think his ownership's going to be? Because if you look at all of his advanced metrics, they're fine. And if everyone knew that Price was throwing 100 pitches tonight, right, he would be 80% owned at his price tag. But obviously, he's probably going to be down. I would say between 75 and 80. I would assume he's going to throw about 5 innings. So what do you think? Do you think he gets any ownership, I guess? Because we know that you're going to pay up for your SP1 and you're probably going to pay or just play Musgrove as your SP2. So what do you think happens with Price? Do you think like it's just a play that we're on that most people probably aren't going to go to?
Yeah, I think he'll get some ownership, definitely. By the time we get to lock, it's just going to be apparent that he's just too cheap. But I do think he's going to be like way less owned than Musgrove, and I think he can outscore Musgrove. So I'm just going to play him for much cheaper.
Yeah, like that. Anthony asked, any Galaxy Brain starting pitchers tonight? Is there anyone you like that's kind of out there?
Oh man. If you want a Galaxy Brain, I don't know. You probably agree. I still think you can play Alex Cobb, right? I mean the metrics. Bales and I have talked about this many times this season. The metrics are so much better than like the surface numbers indicate that they can be. Obviously Minnesota takes a hit with trading Nelson Cruz, so he's not gonna be in the lineup tonight. So I think if you want a really weird one, you could play Alex Cobb if you want to.
Alex Cobb's really nice, and I'll add to that. Roberto Ortiz is umping that game, so real good for the pitchers. I think another guy that probably gets a little bit more ownership than Cobb, but is also a very good low-owned play tonight is going to be Eduardo Rodriguez. If you look at New York's lineup, it's just really bad at the moment, and for face value, Eduardo Rodriguez is way too expensive. His ERA is 5.19, but when you look at it, his xFIP's still 3.33. His strikeout rate is up around 28%. So he's too expensive for what he's actually done this season, but also he's too cheap for what his advanced metrics suggest he should be doing. So I feel like this is going to be one of the final starts that we get, especially because he's been playing well in recent games where he's under like 9,000, and just getting a matchup against the Yankees is, it's just kind of the perfect recipe for him, in my opinion.
Yep, I don't mind that at all. If you guys have questions on any other pitchers, go ahead, drop them into chat. We will answer them. We're going to move on and talk some stacks here before we get into the positional plays. So for me, I kind of like some bad teams tonight. Maybe not bad teams, but just teams I don't often stack, right? Normally we're on here, we're talking like Dodgers, Yankees, Red Sox, Blue Jays, like kind of common teams. That's not really the case tonight. I like the Nationals a little bit against Jorge Lopez, and I really, really like the Giants and the Tigers. I think that's like my favorite too. And I know you're gonna like the Angels, which I'm fine with them too. The righties, but
Yep.
I think the Giants are a really good stack and they're really cheap. And the Tigers, I've actually had decent success when I played the Tigers this year, and no one plays them on bigger slates because of the Tigers. So that's probably my favorite too.
I really like it. I think it's a good call. It's tough not to just say the Dodgers because Chichi Gonzalez is legitimately bad. The Dodgers lineup is very good.
Yeah, I was
I do
actually
like
going
the
to bring
Dodgers
that
a
up.
lot.
That's a good point. So they're not going to have Muncy, right? Because he's on
Mhm.
whatever. I don't know what he's out for. Something not
I think
injured or
it's on
related.
paternity leave, right?
Okay, yeah. So he's out, and Bellinger has just been like lost at the plate. So I'm taking him out, and Mookie, I believe, is out as well. So that's like three big bats that are out of the lineup. So I do agree, Chichi Gonzalez is terrible, but if they're going to be chalky because they have a near 6 run total, I'm fine skipping them, at least in like my main team, when I'm going to be stacking like their lower level players because 3 of the big names are out. But I still think they're fine. I just wanted to note that because I was going to bring that up and I forgot until you said that.
Yeah, I get what you're saying because they like Seager's still out, Gavin Lux is out. I mean, there's just a lot of guys that aren't playing at the moment. The problem that I have is that even with that, they still have Will Smith, who's one of the better hitting catchers. Matt Beattie, I don't necessarily love, but for 2,400, I'm fine with it. And then you have like Chris Taylor AJ Pollock have both been just absolutely destroying, and you can even stack them with Justin Turner. Like you can. There's teams where you try to stack them and you can't really get five good guys. Detroit generally is one of them. It's really hard to stack five guys that you feel confident in with Detroit, whereas the Dodgers literally lost like five different guys to either paternity leave or the injured list, or they're just day to day, and you still feel relatively comfortable using like five guys that they're putting in their lineup, which is kind of weird and just shows how deep that team is.
Yeah, definitely. So outside of Dodgers, who do you like? I really think Giants are my favorite today, personally. And I was gonna bring this up, but whenever we get to Jock Market later on today, Giants are probably a team that I'll be targeting pretty heavily tonight.
Yeah, I like that. I think the Giants are really good. I think Cool's really bad. For me, I really like Washington. I really like the Angels. I think that Cincinnati's in a really good spot as well. Those are probably my top three. But I also agree that you can use like Detroit, San Francisco, even Kansas City. Like those are going to be some lower owned stacks. I think you can go a different route with some guys too, like Baltimore against Patrick Corbin. I doubt anyone uses them tonight. Those are probably where I'm at for like the top options. I don't know if there's really any other team that I want to stack too much. Like I think you can take a shot with the Mets if you want, but on this slate, there's probably like 6 or 7 stacks that I like more than them.
Yeah, there's tons of ways to go tonight. If you guys have questions on any stacks we did not mention, you can ask them in the chat. We will answer it. There's just a lot of ways to go. So if we didn't specifically mention one that you like, it's not necessarily that it is a bad play. There's just a lot going on here, and I don't want to list off every team on the slate. And I don't think that's very helpful. So I try to narrow it down to like the truly couple that I'm targeting. But let's get into some positional plays. We're going to start off at catcher. Catcher's pretty straightforward for me today. I'm going to spend up, I think. I like Buster Posey and I like Eric Haas from the Tigers in that upper 4K territory on DraftKings. And then if I don't want to spend up, you have Kurt Suzuki, who's in the middle of the Angels lineup as a righty against J-Happ, who's 3K on DraftKings. So that's literally I'm playing Kurt Suzuki, or I'm going to jump up to Haas or Buster Posey.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you. I will say, and I know we always wait on this, Eric Haas is homering tonight. It's locked in.
Dude, I love
You're
that
not
call.
stopping it.
I love it. Dude's a monster. And I remember, like, we've talked, I don't know if I talked to you about this or what, but like the first day that Eric Haas came up this year, it was a day slate, and the Tigers were up against a bad lefty, and I played him. And he did well, but like I just remember watching the game and like the Tigers announcers were talking about how like great he just looks standing in the box, and I like made a mental note of it, and he's just been hitting the ball so hard the whole season. So yeah,
he's nuts against lefties.
Yeah,
it's honestly crazy. But
he's like the new Mitch Garver, dude.
Yeah, he's what everyone wants Mitch Garver to be at this point.
Yeah,
I think that Tyler Stevenson is another really good option. And James McCann. James McCann's another lefty masher.
Completely agree. We'll go to first base. I will let you lead off here.
First base is really interesting. I mean, there's guys like Carlos Santana. I don't have any issues. If you want to drop down, like Matt Beatty's 2,400 or Ryan Zimmerman's also 2,400. You have Josh Bell. I'm fine with that. I didn't see the Angels lineup. I'm assuming Ohtani's playing tonight, or did they give him a night off?
They gave him the night off, I believe.
I was gonna go with Ohtani, but I guess one of the guys that I feel like is just way too cheap tonight would be Lamont Wade, because under 3K you get the obvious matchup against Chad Kuhl. He's leading off, and he's much better against right-handed pitching. If you don't want to drop all the way down there, I do think that Trey Mancini or Ryan Mountcastle are both very good plays against Patrick Corbin. And then I think that you can play someone like Pete Alonso, although it would feel kind of weird spending up to 6,000 for him when there's like so many good cheaper options. And there's just a ton of really good plays tonight, so you're going to want to spend up elsewhere.
Yeah, I had two guys tagged as cash playable in Game Theory article. It was Lamont Wade and Miguel Cabrera, who both are extremely cheap. I think they're both under 3K, right, on DraftKings. So
Yeah,
two,
29 and 27.
yeah, so two really good cheap options there. I do think Josh Bell's going to get a ton of ownership. He's 4K. He's going to be in the middle of the Nats lineup. I think he's going to project really well, and he's going to get a lot of ownership. So you can use him if you want, but I like those cheaper guys. Or if I'm spending up, I would probably go with Mancini if I was going to pick one spend up.
Yep, I like that a lot.
Second base, I think for spend ups, I really like Jonathan Scope. That's another guy that has been hitting the ball really hard against lefties. I think he's going to be pretty low owned because he is decently expensive. Like 4,900 is not technically what you want to spend on a Tigers bat. And then you have some other guys up there as well. Jose Altuve against a lefty is going to project pretty well. But I like Scope if I'm spending up. How about you?
I think my top option is David Fletcher. I mean, he's been hitting the ball as well as literally anyone in MLB recently. And obviously, I like the matchup against J. Happ. So I think Fletcher would be my one. I also like Altuve. I think Scope's fine. If you're spending down, I would probably drop to Alcides Escobar. He's just been really good since returning. And I mean, he's only 3,200 yet, which is still pretty crazy that they aren't raising his price tag.
Yeah, I'm shocked that he is still that cheap. It's pretty amazing. Third base, I'll let you start here. I mean, there's some decent like mid-tier options if you want to talk about Eugenio Suarez, but I'll let you lead off the position here.
Honestly, I'm not 100% sure what to do at third base. I think Justin Turner is very viable. The problem is he's 6,000. Like they finally priced him to the point where like you're not just going to play him because of the matchup he's in. I think that Jose Ramirez is probably a better play, 800 cheaper. I'm always in on Jose Ramirez against the lefty. I think that you can play a guy like DJ LeMahieu, even though I like Eduardo Rodriguez. If you want like the high priced, low owned guy that has a very good chance at hitting a home run, Rafael Devers obviously gets Garrett Cole, who his big struggle is home runs. And then I guess the two guys that kind of make the most sense to me is Candelero at 4,500 and same price JD Davis. I just feel like that's a bit too cheap for him.
Yeah, I think Josh Harrison is cheap as well. He's batting 2,600 on DraftKings. I think is a good play. I like kind of like that mid tier where you have Suarez, Brian Hayes, Kyle Seager. Like I like all those guys as one off. You could throw Candelario in there as well if you're gonna play Detroit. So I might live in that mid tier or cheaper. But if you're spending up, I think it's probably I don't know. I'd probably pick Jose Ramirez, but I do like the Devers call. If you're not going to play Garrett Cole in your lineup, taking a one off against him, I think does make a ton of sense in tournaments.
Yeah, we know how good he is against right-handed pitching. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, shortstop. I think you're probably spending up here, and it's on Trey Turner or Fernando Tatis Jr. You can use either of those guys. If you don't want to spend up, is there anyone in the mid tier or like the cheaper tier that you like there?
Yeah, Jose Iglesias is hitting third. I liked him, and I thought he was going to hit seventh. So hitting third, I think he's a great option. He's been hitting the ball really well. He gets the matchup against Happ that we've been targeting basically the entire podcast. So I do think you probably spend up for someone like Trey Turner. I have Turner probably as my top play, but I have no issues whatsoever with Tatis. And if you aren't going there,
he might be out of the lineup. I think
Tatis.
Yeah, he's not starting. So I guess it's Turner if you're spending up. Then.
Easy. Trey Turner. You're going Trey Turner or Jose Iglesias?
Yeah, agree on Iglesias. The one other cheap play I'll throw in Zach Short for the Tigers. He's actually hit the ball super hard. Last 14 days, he was up there in the leaderboards for hard contact, and I believe he homered 2 games ago. He's actually been seeing the ball pretty well. He's cheap. He's batting 6th. Don't mind that.
I'd agree with that.
And we'll finish up at outfield. Obviously, tons of options here. You could talk about spend ups. I think you're going with Juan Soto today. At least that's my personal favorite. Other than him, You could talk about the Rays guys a little bit. Nelson Cruz is in the Rays lineup, so you have him. You have Brandon Lowe. You have Austin Meadows. All those guys, I think, are pretty decent plays. You have Joey Gallo in that kind of mid tier 4,500 against a righty. I don't mind that. So I actually think there's some good options. And then I don't really want to target Lucas Giolito, but Christian Yelich is down to 4,200 on DraftKings. I do feel like that's worthy of mentioning.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the only guy that I would add for like the higher price tier is AJ Pollock. Assuming he's hitting near the top of the lineup, I think he's supposed to hit second tonight, and he's been just absolutely scorching the ball. So I do like him at 4,400.
Yeah, and we'll drop down here to the cheaper tier. I think like Justin Upton and Phil Goslin are both really good plays for the Angels, and they're both cheap. Other than them, I do want to bring up Brent Rooker. Don't really want to play him in like cash, but I think if you need like a cheaper one-off in tournaments, you could consider him. Even though we kind of hyped up Cobb, Rooker's just someone that has really big power, and he's only 3,400. So I think he's worthy of like a one-off in a tournament lineup. But I really like those cheap Angels guys today.
Completely agree. I think you can add Jorge Soler and Austin Hayes. They're both under 3,000. I have no problems if you want to play either one of them. And then again, at 2,400 is Matt Beattie, which is just kind of a ridiculous price tag for one, a matchup against Gigi Gonzalez, but two, hitting in the Dodgers lineup.
Yep, I think we covered everything pretty well. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys have any last minute questions, drop them in. I would ask you for a home run call, but you kind of gave that away earlier with Eric Haas, right? So is that your pick for home run tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see a way in which this guy doesn't homer tonight.
All right, I like it. I'm gonna pick Mike Yastrzemski for mine. Kind of sticking with that Giants theme. Only
I
4,100
like
on
it.
DraftKings. It's a pretty solid
I
play.
like it.
So I'm sitting in this chair, and I set my water bottle down earlier, and it just wasn't closed all the way. So there's just water everywhere. I've just been finishing out the pod, staying on brand, not worrying about the spilled water. But now
On
it's
brand is everything around you is just folding.
yeah, terrible. But good luck tonight, guys. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back Monday for another stream.